LCS, and I am pleased to have you join us this afternoon for ensuring long-term success in senior living communities with capital reserve strategies. While we wait for our lobby area to fill up, I see it's filling rapidly. I just want to take the time to introduce who's going to be presenting with us today. Pleased to have these folks join us. We have subject matter experts who are guiding us on our journey. I'm going to ask each to introduce themselves. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I would ask that you reserve your questions. You can certainly put them in the chat. We have an off-camera gentleman who's going to be helping us out. Paul is going to assist us at the end of this presentation if there's time to answer any questions that you may have. So you can certainly feel free to put them in chat or save them for the end. But with that, I want to start to introduce our folks. Nick, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, David. Nick Herrick, Vice President Director with LCS Development. We help a lot of communities reposition, renovate, and build new greenfield throughout the country.
Excellent. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Nick. Rob.
My name is Rob Milam. I'm the CEO and owner of Zumbrunnin Inc. We perform construction monitoring and capital planning for a variety of markets, but most predominantly not-for-profit senior living.
Pleasure to have you here with us today, Rob. Lori?
Hello, my name is Lori Stallings. I'm the Executive Director at Cypress Glen Retirement Community. We're located in Greenville, North Carolina. We're one of 3 of the United Methodist Retirement Homes, which is based in Durham, North Carolina. Been a part of Life Care Services since 2000.
Excellent to have you with us, Lori. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Lori is an active executive director in a community right now. I understand she has a busy day going on. So if you hear a little bit of background noise, Lori, I'm excusing you right now. You're gracious to join us, so thank you. And my name is David Mercliano. As I said, I'm Vice President and Senior Director of Business Development here at LCS, and welcome. Our goals today are to go through these learning objectives. First is to understand best practices for physical plant assessment to help to avoid deferred maintenance. It's a fundamental objective. 2, planning, learning how to integrate capital reserve studies, budget planning, partner selection, and CapEx program implementation into your plan for the community. 3, resources. Learn about the resources that support efficient program execution, including considerations for potential repositioning opportunities. And as we get into our conversation later on today, we're going to understand more and more about what that third objective is all about. Can't do this kind of presentation without at least a nod to those who bring it to you. So I represent the LCS family of communities. We've been in existence a little over 50 years, actually started as developers. And over the course of time, we're asked by our clients to build and progressively augment the resources that we had. And so we have a family of companies. The ones that are most notable to you are Life Care Services. Life Care Services today is the largest operator of not-for-profit life plan communities in the country. We are the 4th largest overall operator of senior living and services with some 37,000 residents under our roofs. You may also be familiar with Care Purchasing Services. Care Purchasing Services is a $1 billion GPO that supports our communities and another 3,800 unaffiliated communities, helping them to save money every day on everything, including the things we're talking about today. And finally, LCS Development. LCS Development can help to bring your ideas from inception through master planning, feasibility studies, market analytics with our own in-house teams, all the way through development consulting, fill up the stabilization, a wide range of services that's supporting many organizations to build for tomorrow today. With that, my friend Rob, Zum.
Zumbrunnin, since 1989, has supported the senior living market initially with construction monitoring in the context of bond financed senior living expansion and construction projects. And from that sprung our current emphasis, our emphasis for a bunch of years now, which is capital planning. We perform what we call a capital replacement analysis. And we have a small staff in Atlanta, Georgia, primarily, with a few scattered out throughout the country, of senior level seasoned engineers, construction professionals, architects who know the senior living market and who know buildings and who know how to assess capital assets. So with that, we perform walkthrough surveys and data processing, and the result that we deliver to senior living operators such as yours is a comprehensive capital replacement plan with line item detail that can serve the needs of the C-suite with 30,000 foot view budget planning, and it can serve the facility manager suite with tools for day-to-day decision making on asset replacement.
Rob and Lori, tell us about Cypress Glen.
Cypress Glen opened its doors in 1987, and we've been in a continual growth pattern. We've actually had 5 additions to the community or repositioning projects with the community, and we're working on one right now where we will be adding 57 new apartments. Capital planning is very important to us. I'm really happy to say that the ratio that one of the ratios that we look at every month is the average age of the facility. And though the community is 37 years old, our average age is about 13 years old. So I think that speaks to the fact that we take capital planning very seriously, and it pays off.
Well, that's why we asked you to join us today, and we're looking forward to hearing more about your expertise and how you pulled that off. So our audience wants to know, how do these conversations usually begin? Rob, I think we kicked that to you as to who an organization is most likely to engage in.
Well, an engagement with Zumbrunnan normally is initiated by a CEO, a CFO, or COO who understand that they need a strategic plan for capital replacements and capital projects, but they lack the basic information to prioritize those capital needs. Sometimes the need is driven by a master planning exercise, sometimes by a board decision. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's driven by a forbearance agreement, and most unfortunately, sometimes by a bankruptcy court. Often, a CEO will reach out to us simply because he or she knows that they're sitting on a backlog of deferred maintenance and have no comprehensive plan to tackle that backlog. Resource scarcity often compounds the feelings of pressure and uncertainty in making sound CapEx decisions, largely driving these initial inquiries. So a key challenge that leaders face, and the trigger for calling me, is operating in an information vacuum. Leaders know that their physical plant is aging and deteriorating, but no one knows which catastrophic failure is going to happen next. They don't know which projects should I prioritize. Many are overwhelmed by a pile of seemingly urgent capital needs with limited resources, and many find themselves putting out fires, operating from a reactionary position rather than a proactive, strategic position. Of course, when an organization is working from a reactionary position, it leads to mounting pressure on the part and uncertainty on part of the leadership, which inevitably trickles down to staff and residents. Additionally, aside from the immediate need for a plan to replace failing assets, there's the long-term challenge of strategic planning. Thinking about future growth or repositioning or changing occupancy can trigger a need to accelerate or to defer a particular asset replacement or even a large renovation project. Market positioning is important, and which we can help support. You will hear Nick talk later about how a capital plan plays into maintaining or even supercharging a community's position in the market.
Thanks for sharing that, Rob. So, Nick, I know you've had some experience in some other things that can trigger activity along the lines of CapEx. Tell us a little bit about the regulatory concerns that might force action.
Yeah, David, every project is very unique, and every community's needs are so different. So it's very important early in the planning process to identify any regulatory code, zoning, accessibility, any of those items so that you can plan for it appropriately. Those hurdles coming up late can be very costly. And it also dictates your timeline most of the time with that. So being able to plan for those accordingly can help you not spend money unwisely. How do you identify those regulatory consultants are very helpful. Rob, for example, civil engineers, architects, developers like ourselves can help with that identification of those regulatory requirements. You don't want to mess up on those regulatory requirements, that's for sure.
Yeah, certainly not. And Lori, we've heard Rob share with us, sort of the key triggers or even the ideas that might trigger looking for or digging into capital needs assessments. And we heard just now from Nick talking about the regulatory requirements that might trigger it. But there's a lot more that goes into that, isn't there? When you're gathering input into CapEx priorities, what are the voices you want to consider as an ED or a CEO? And how do you use that input to prioritize projects?
Well, I always say that capital projects or capital needs can be defined in three different ways. They're either needs, wants, or wishes. So a need could be, replacing a new chiller. A want could be we want a larger bus so that we can all travel together to go see plays in a neighboring town. And a wish might be that eventually we'll have a new wellness center that will have a deep water salt treated pool. Those are all things that have been a part of our capital plans over the years. There's formal ways that we determine what these needs, wants, and wishes would be. We've already heard a little bit about master planning, satisfaction surveys by our residents, and our staff engagement surveys help us with that. Each year we develop a business plan that contains a SWOT analysis. So that's another voice that speaks to us to help to determine capital needs. And then, of course, as we've heard from Rob, having some sort of capital asset management system. Just a little shameless plug here. We have used Zembrunnen for many, many years, and it helps us out immensely. But any sort of capital management system that's available on the market, I think is a very important thing to have to be able to operate your community, because you are spending so much money on these capital projects, and it helps to give you a form of reference for justification. And then on the informal side, we're always listening to our residents. I have regular weekly meetings with different groups of residents, and I hear their ideas and their concerns. And some of the best things that have happened here at Cypress Glen have been the ideas of our residents. So that's certainly one way. And then another informal opportunity for determining the needs is going to trade shows and just staying abreast of current trends. Last year at Leading Age, we saw a lot about robotics, and how with the dwindling workforce, the baby boomers coming in and the millennials coming behind as our workforce. Thank goodness we've got them, but we've got to figure out ways to work smarter instead of harder with the reduction in the workforce. So all of that ties into capital planning and our capital management.
Or you also had shared with me that in addition to all that input from the residents, perhaps even from your board and from residents' families, you also do market research, and you study there as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I should have mentioned that. But market research is critical, hearing from your constituents, hearing from the experts, experts like Nick and the others at LCS Development, all of the professionals that are here to support us. It does truly take a village to make all of these decisions.
Yeah, I would add to that too, Lori. It's not just about the current residents, it's about future residents, right? And having focus groups or surveys that test both of those markets is very key to learn more about your community.
You're exactly right, Nick. When we're doing these expansion projects, your current residents are saying, oh, we don't need to have a salt treated pool. And then you've got your future residents saying, I'll never move to a community unless they've got a state of the art wellness center. 20 years ago, I never thought we would have, that we'd ever have a bar here in this community. And now we have a lovely bar that serves not only alcohol, but serves all kinds of specialty drinks, coffee, smoothies, etc. But we had a group of residents who were saying, we don't need to spend money on that. But market research tells us that, those things are what the future residents will be looking for. So we've got to be focused on both.
Yeah, it's more of an art than a science for sure. You got your existing residents that bought in because they like what they saw when they bought in, and then you're trying to keep up with the marketplace and stay relevant. So it's important to look at both sides.
Right, absolutely. And just prioritizing, what we're doing with this expansion right now. Hearing from residents that we need a larger auditorium. One of the most important things that's a part of this project is a flood mitigation berm. Cypress Glen, unfortunately, was flooded back in 1999 as a result of several hurricanes that were back to back. And so we have wanted a flood mitigation berm for a long time, but we had to be financially in the right position to be able to do that. And, there had to be the proper incentives in place. And of course, with insurance costs going up, making the decision to spend money to build this berm was really important and needed to tie it in with this project. So that's certainly a big help. But again, you're going back to the regulators, you're going back to the experts that are, advising us on how to do this. And then that way we can say firmly to our board, to our residents, to all of our constituents, we're spending Cypress Glen's money in the right way.
Justifying those necessary expenses to residents today who may not see the need. After all, many of your residents may not have lived there when the community last flooded, right? In that particular instance of the berm. So what a good example of that. So Nick, I realize, that's sort of the fun or the more obvious feed. LCS has got an additional way to do it. I'm going to call it that. So help us to understand how LCS looks at strategy and planning. And we share this with the audience, not because you're necessarily going to use LCS's system, but it's an example of what you yourselves might do in terms of really putting some structure into how you plan for tomorrow. Nick, tell us about it.
Hey, Nick, you're muted. You might want to come off mute.
Yeah, that always helps, doesn't it? Thank you. So I was sharing, although you couldn't hear me, that you may or may not know, we do have equity in a lot of communities across the state or across the country. And creating a plan was important to us. We spent some time really making sure that we created a process that aligned the stakeholders and making sure that we had clear, transparent communication. As we're developing 5-year plans, we're looking to master plan every one of our communities so that we can identify the opportunities that exist. And then it comes back to consistent, dedicated reporting back to the corporate office, from the home office to the field offices, making sure that we have clear, transparent communication, and then followed up by quarterly stakeholder meetings to reassess where we're currently at in that plan and what has been completed at that point in time. So the key takeaway here, whether you use a plan like this or not, it comes down to making sure you have a plan in place to clearly communicate the progress and reassess as needed.
Yeah, it's a good approach because it keeps the team. I know it keeps the team on task. It doesn't allow things to sort of linger. You're constantly going back to the assessment, the 5-year plan, and making sure that the community is lined up with the needs that were identified by all those stakeholders we talked about before. So, Rob, tell us what kinds of information your team usually provides when you do come in. You've had a CEO or a board member or, heaven help you, perhaps an investment group that owns the community now come in and ask you to do an assessment. What kind of information do you provide and sort of put it in perspective for us?
Okay. Thank you for the question, David. Our team leverages our construction and design expertise to provide a facility assessment. There's a two-pronged deliverable, a facility assessment, and which provides the information for what follows, which is a long-term replacement schedule. And that replacement schedule is completed with budgetary pricing for asset replacement. The output tells you what you should replace and when you should replace it and at what cost. So we use two basic tools really to build a capital replacement plan. The facility assessment, as I mentioned, is a walkthrough survey. It's an expert with feet on the ground and a camera to understand the physical condition of the critical assets on your community. For each asset, we will ask and answer the question, how long should we expect asset X to last? And this is accomplished, with, like I said, with a visual walkthrough. It's not necessary to perform diagnostic testing and core sampling to arrive at these conclusions. So, and then with those findings, we filter those findings through a rubric, like the one you see on your screen, for determining an urgency or a priority level for every capital replacement. We will plot each replacement, each potential failure event on the matrix, such as this, where we measure a severity of a likely failure to the operational probability of that failure. And for a glimpse of, for an example of how you would assess the urgency, if, for instance, if you had a chiller that was 23 years old, approaching the end of its useful life in a coastal environment, and it had no redundant backup, failure very well might be critical. So on this matrix that you're looking at, it could easily approach into that critical or catastrophic failure severity level. Now, given that it's 23 years old and on a coastal environment exposed to harsh weather conditions, you can expect that failure is imminent. If it very well might fail tomorrow. So that places this capital need in the upper right-hand corner of this matrix, making it an acute replacement need or a very high urgency level. And with that, we can use that information to plot that replacement and every other replacement on a matrix, on a schedule. Now, there are huge operational and financial and marketing benefits to operating an organization from a proactive position. So what I just described as a catastrophic failure, that's the obvious benefit is avoiding that failure, but there's pros as well. When you plan and operate proactively, you're free to pursue your mission with intentionality and without the distraction of operating in crisis management mode, putting out fires. So the matrix you're looking at now demonstrates how avoiding certain costs, certain costs associated with failures, how avoiding them can be an implicit good in and of itself. By avoiding the inflated cost of an emergency replacement, you have achieved cash preservation and a healthy cash flow, which is absolutely critical for operations. By avoiding the indirect costs associated with those replacements, you've achieved cash preservation. And by avoiding the collateral property damage, you've achieved asset preservation and bonus reduced property insurance premiums. By avoiding all these perils, you've achieved life safety preservation, which converts to reputational benefits and goodwill in the community. And by avoiding your operational disruptions associated with these failures, you've achieved operational efficiency, which everyone wants, of course. Averting catastrophes like the chiller that I described puts you in a position to maximize growth and to really enjoy a rock star opportunity in the community.
Rob, you're exactly right. We had in using our capital asset management program, it was identified that our centrifugal force chiller needed to be replaced. And so we planned for that. And fortunately, it continued working until we had it taken out of service, and the new one was commissioned. And we did it on a beautiful fall day, a couple of days in the fall when we could be without heating or cooling. And I got to tell you, our director of plant ops at the time, his name was Jim. He was the hero in the community because he took care of the residents. He was forward thinking. It spoke volumes to our residents that we planned this well. It helps our reputation. And our residents are engineers and contractors, and they're all experts in their field, leaders in their fields. And they all know how to do things very well, but we are the professionals in this industry. And by doing good capital planning, we just, as you said, we end up looking like the rock stars because we did it right.
Good point, Lori. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. That anecdote, though, gets backed up by some science. Rob, tell us a little bit about Gieslin's inverse square rule for deferred maintenance.
So a smart man named Todd Gieslin, who operated as a facility manager for a long time, developed this axiom where a part that's allowed to fail in service could cost eventually the square of the original cost of that part in emergency costs, collateral damage, all the ancillary related collateral costs that go along with it. And the example that he used was a toilet valve. A simple $15 toilet valve that's allowed to leak is very likely going to damage floor covering and wall covering. It's going to displace residents. It's going to operate disruptions. And $15 times $15, you can easily burn through that in an emergency situation. So
I'll bet more than that.
Yeah, easily. So
we have on the screen looks a little scarier. Walk us through this real life version.
So this real life tale involves a catastrophic failure. Again, this chiller existed on a coastal environment, and the original chiller, 23 years old, it was near the end of its useful life. It turned out to be on this particular Saturday in August at the end of its useful life when the residents began calling the front desk complaining that their air conditioner's not blowing, and it turns out that this chiller needs to be replaced. Well, the chiller you can't buy it at Home Depot. You can't order one and have it delivered Monday. It's a made to order item. And in this case, with an additional expediting fee of $60,000 on top of the regular price, we were allowed to get it in 12 weeks. So for 12 weeks, the community in northern Florida had to find a solution for cooling. They spent $105,000 on a truck-mounted rental chiller. And these rental, in this case, being a Friday afternoon, the rental chiller wasn't available until Monday, and 3 days of weekend and 1 day of hookup and installation cost. There was a need for temporary housing, $100,000 worth. So in this case, the failed chiller was nearly double, the emergency replacement was nearly double the original cost, double the cost if that chiller had been bought under normal economic conditions, which could have happened with some proactive skill management with a plan. So the question for this community is, and for you, how would you know that this chiller is about to fail without a facility assessment and without a capital replacement study performed by Zumbrannen's team of skilled and expert and professional experts.
I mean, at the end of the day, somebody needs to be staying on top of this. This is a pretty frightful experience for the residents. I'm sure it's a frightful experience for the community's reputation. You can imagine what the family members are doing. This is not a situation that I think anybody wants to experience. But so now we have sort of a fear situation balanced with the realities of financial health. So you know you have things to do, but you may or may not have the capital to do it. Nick, you work with a lot of communities. Many are not associated with LCS. Tell us how community leaders balance those needs. You know, you've got pressing capital concerns, but you've got to maintain cash flow and financial health for the community.
Yeah, David, as you mentioned, we work with a lot of communities, both on the for-profit side and the not-for-profit side, both life plan and rental. So it varies a lot depending on the organization structure. But what doesn't vary much is looking at cash reserves, looking at loans, potential grants, tax credits, for example, as well. Historic tax credits potentially are available out there as well. Investor capital and equity that you have. So taking a look at all the available resources that you have up front, coming up with a way of evaluating your return on investment is always very important, and the cost effectiveness of that, whether that's an IRR or debt service coverage ratio or days cash on hand. There's several different metrics out there. And then lastly, just the impact of the work itself, and the difference it's going to make in the community in implementing these CapEx projects. Some of that is irreplaceable, and you can't put a return on investment on it. Some of it's making sure that you're staying relevant in the marketplace. So it really customize it to your community and make sure you're looking at the metrics that matter most to you when you're evaluating these options. Yeah, if you go to the next slide. Sorry, David, go ahead.
I was just going to say that makes a lot of sense. We, of course, prepared for our presentation today. And we were talking about this next slide that you're going to explain to us, but it sort of is the pressure behind balancing what you know needs to be done and available cash on hand, and how you're gonna manage that and what it looks like. So tell us a little bit about product lifestyle. Product, of course, being your community.
Yes, this is a graphic we like to use. I think it graphically represents just the maturity of a community over time. So looking at the product life cycle, without proper reinvestment at the appropriate time, deterioration does occur. Without reinvestment, you're going to end up with a revolution instead of an evolution. And we always want to come out on the top, right? So with reinvestments, you got an evolution curve that you can restart that life cycle with. And every time you reinvest into the community, whether it's from capital investments or repositionings, expansions, you're evolving that community, and you're able to balance that revenue generation and non-revenue generation opportunities with this product life cycle as well.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Right, if you wait too long, it becomes entirely a different matter. So, Lori, you've led your community, as you've described, through tons of capital projects, and just in the course of our conversations leading up to today, you certainly impressed all of us by how readily you handle the stress of that. But I think the audience wants to know, like, from your perspective as the leader of the community, how do you get this done?
Well, the budget process for us starts, about 6 months into the fiscal year, so that we're prepared for the next fiscal year, and pulling out that report that our capital management program is one of the first steps in formulating that capital budget, and we literally, as we're plugging those items into our budget. Because we use Zumbrannen, we have that item, we have that dollar amount, we plan for what month we expect the expenditure to occur, so we can look at cash flows, but we put a little Z by it, and then that helps us when we're presenting the budget to the board, to the residents, so why are you budgeting to replace these fan motors? Why are you budgeting to replace windows? Well, that's because the expert recommendation was there to do those things. But I think just really being very transparent and keeping everybody informed about why we are doing these things and how we're coming up with these ideas, so that it's not just me, our accounting director, our CFO, our DOM, our director of plant ops saying, well, we think we ought to do this. And then, going out and getting the right pricing, going out and shopping for what those things are that we need, using our group buying organization. And of course, with LCS, that is CPS, so they're certainly partners in that. And then looking at, we use lift equipment in our health center. So, our organization has been able to negotiate some rebates on purchasing Arjo lifts. They don't last forever. And so from a resident safety standpoint, you need to make sure that you're replacing them on a timely basis. But knowing that you've got, the incentive programs and that sort of thing to help to offset those costs is a key feature that, we need to tie into. Our residents are very benevolent and gracious here at this community, and they often give us gifts, with an intention to purchase, maybe it's to purchase or to fund a new clinic space where that space has to be equipped with all of the equipment, and the space actually has to be renovated. So working those things into the capital project or into the capital plan is all critical. And just the slide that we were looking at earlier, and looking at the age of the community. Again, Cypress Glen is 37 years old, but we're still on that growth spectrum in that because the average life of our facility based on ratios is a little under 13. So getting the capital projects in place is really critical to the survival of your community. We're asking our residents to make a very large investment to live here in these communities, and they've got to see that we're doing the same, that we're making these investments as well.
All right, for not first time today, I'm highlighting why it was that we chose you to participate in this panel. You've done so much of it. Sounds like you are the quintessential ringmaster, making sure that all of the voices are heard and all the experts are consulted, and you're not leaving the residents in the sidelines. Impressive work. You've undertaken a number of projects, so you've actually lived the life and done it. Share with us a little bit more about the work that you've done.
Well, David, first of all, I can't take the credit for that. We have a great team here. And, I strongly believe that, we all need to surround ourselves with experts. So, just having the right people at the table and doing the right things is most important. So, right now we're doing this repositioning and an expansion where we'll be adding 57 apartments, new dining, a new auditorium, realigning our entrance into the community. And of course, I mentioned the flood mitigation berm, which we sorely need. We started master planning with LCS development pre-pandemic, had to put it on the shelf for a little while. And then we pulled it back out and started working on it again. And, we're looking at move-ins for the 57 apartments to start in December of this year. So lots going on and really exciting, but it's been fun as we've been looking at the project. Each year, the person who is heading up the project development for us, a great fellow by the name of Dan, we're pulling out our capital budgets for the year, and we're looking at it and saying, we're doing this in the expansion, we need to be able to do the same in the current project. So just a good example about that is a fire alarm system. And currently in our existing buildings, we have strobes and those really loud, annoying horns. In the expanded area, we'll have strobes and speakers, which will be very nice. So we don't want our current residents to feel like they're living in a less than section of the community. But yet we didn't want to add a lot of expense to the project to bring up things within the current community. So for the 2025 budget, we budgeted to add the strobes and speaker system for the fire alarm into the existing wings here in the community. So again, we didn't load extra expense into the bond financing for the project, but we're able to bring the whole community up to a new standard, and then just maximizing the use of the available funds. So it's fun to be able to do that and to kind of have a win-win. The existing community is getting this improved fire alarm system. The head end, the cost for that was going to be there anyway. So that's being borne by the proceeds from the bond sale for the expansion project. So just really thinking about all of your different sources of revenue and how you can put those all together to just improve your community is a really good opportunity and something to capitalize on.
Yeah, Lori, I love that you brought up the master planning and even the shelf life of that master planning. It's not something I heard you say before, but it's very impactful to understand the opportunities that you have in front of you and how you can potentially roll some of those into a much bigger plan as well. So it's great to hear that those master plans are helping you in doing that. And I'd encourage anybody that doesn't have a master plan at their campus to definitely consider it.
Oh, it's invaluable. And like you said, Nick, it's not just something you do today. It's something that, you can work towards that master plan for years. You just got to have a plan.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Lori, for sharing that. Nick, I know that as you go through this process with clients across the country, you're not just simply saying, okay, we've got to update your fire alarm system. Although, Lori, I really appreciate that example because it's an example of, I know everybody in this audience has that experience of doing things that aren't exciting. But Nick, as you listen to the needs of your clients, you're also trying to educate them and help them to keep their communities contemporary and exciting. So tell us a little bit about the trends and the demographics and the things that you're seeing in that slide is labeled consumer of the future, because LCS has done a great deal of research, but we all know that the incoming population of consumers is very, very different than their predecessors. What they're looking for is different. So tell us about it, Nick.
Yeah, been working with a lot of boards, there's a lot of board education, and obviously having our own internal market research team is so beneficial, right? So we've done a lot of research around what we're calling the consumer of the future. And it's really around the baby boomers, right? And what we're hearing comes down to just a freedom of choice. They don't want to be told what to do. They want the choices to be able to enjoy the activities, the dining. So it's more about the flexibility and choices for the future resident, whether that's dining venues, multiple dining venues, multiple menus focused on both casual fine dining and grab and go. We're seeing a lot of that across the country. We're seeing an increased focus on wellness and technology. Having a good wellness program, both mind, body, and spirit go hand in hand with all of that. If you're not staying out in front of the consumer, right, you're behind and you're not relevant in the marketplace. So I'd encourage you to take a look at the consumer of the future and really what they're looking for, and then take a look at your own campus as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Nick. I know you've got a couple of examples. Our time might be a little bit short this afternoon, but these are such dramatically different examples of projects that I think started as CapEx and grew into other things. There was opportunity and there was need. So tell us a little bit about Rolling Green Village.
Yeah, so Rolling Green Village is located in Greenville, South Carolina, unlike Lori in North Carolina. But this campus is on 175 acres, which is not always the case, right? So they have the ability to expand. Long-term client, both on our management side of things and our development. We're actually in our third project with them. But back to the main story, after we completed the first project for them, they had identified some deferred maintenance that they were wanting to take care of. And then also the wanting to take a focus and a look at their current dining and kitchen. And they had allocated about $6 million for deferred maintenance, roof, siding, windows, etc., and allocated about $2 million for that dining effort. So we came down and visited with them. They had a unique situation where they had a kitchen on both floors, or I'm sorry, on 2 floors. So they would do their prep cooking on the lower level, and then take an elevator up and finish it on the main. And their dining, although they were only serving 128 homes at the time in independent living, their dining was well undersized. So what we did is talk with them, educated them, and eventually got them to talk about using that $2 million as seed capital for a much bigger project that can be more impactful for much longer. And we ended up creating a master plan that we are now executing. First phase, we added 83 new independent living and 40,000 square foot of new common space, new administration space, marketing, new central kitchen, dining venues, as I mentioned before. And you can see all those pictures on the screen there. And really what the master plan was focused on is right sizing the community. So as I mentioned before, they only had 128 independent living homes on campus, but they had over 120 beds in the higher levels of care. So that ratio was skewed significantly. If you're looking at it from an internal demand standpoint, right? So they were reliant on that external demand and the ebbs and flows of a health center on their financial situation. So having the unique opportunity with 175 acres, we're able to increase independent living in this case. So we're actually executing on the second phase of the master plan and adding another 128 homes, independent living homes, and then demolishing their current assisted living and coming back with a state-of-the-art new assisted living. And then there's a third phase after that that can even add more independent living and focus more on some of their wellness functions as well.
Nick, I love this example because here's an example of a community that needed modernization. It already had budgeted capital expense dollars, and you were able to leverage that to fix a variety of needs and modernize it and create real excitement. And I know that's very different than the next case study you're going to share with us about Porter's Neck Village.
Yeah, so Porter's Neck Village is in Wilmington, North Carolina. And we came to them after actually we started master planning, and during the master planning efforts, they had 2 hurricanes, significant weather damage on some of their eastern existing 30-plus-year-old homes, 8-foot ceilings, no overhangs, or limited overhangs, as you can see the taller buildings on that upper right-hand corner, very limited overhangs to protect from the weather. So we put together a master plan with obviously the board, consulting with them, taking a look at opportunities. We identified an area where if we relocated the maintenance and hobby shop to the back corner of the community, if you look at the top left map there, we were able to fit in 36 new hybrid homes in that space in the form of 3 12-plexes, and then we were able to fit another 8-plex in the back corner. And what that did was allow us to really catch up, if you will, and also buy time to where we could stop selling some of those homes in the central area there. So it's taken about 2.5 years now, but we have vacated most of those residences now by transferring them to other places across the campus. Some of them moved on to higher levels of care, and we're actually in the position now to execute on a phase 2 where we're taking down 70 of those homes and coming back with 67 new homes. Again, state of the art. You can see some pictures on the bottom left and right. The other thing that it afforded them was the ability to go in and renovate and expand their common amenities as well. And you can see the picture on the top right and the one in the middle are examples of what we were able to execute there.
Amazing story, and one that was really motivated by, dramatic, sudden, unpredictable damage. And here the community is revitalized and expanded and better serves its residents. What a great example. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're nearing the very end of our session today. I want to leave you with a few key takeaways. First, identify quick wins. Low-hanging opportunities can have really significant impact on your residents' lives, on their experience, on the condition of the community. Be proactive. Avert hazards, control cost, protect your reputation, protect how the community perceives you. Don't go it alone. Expertise is available. Consultants are there. That is penny wise to spend the money, engage the consultants, learn about what can be done in the situation that you find yourself in. Harness things like GPOs. Most of what you buy every day for the community can be purchased through GPO. CPS, Care Purchasing Services, is how LCS does it, how many of our partners do it, but there's always one out there available to you. And promote community evolution, maintain the market acceptance. These last two case study examples that Nick was kind enough to present us with tells us a lot about, maintaining position in the market, promoting enthusiasm for the community so it survives to serve another generation. So those are great takeaways. I want you to see that there's contact information on the bottom of the screen. Encourage you to reach out to any of us if you have any questions or comments or concerns. And to that point, Paul, I wonder if you could tell us, do we have any questions from the audience? Because this is our opportunity. We just have a few minutes left.
Yeah, thank you, David. So as a reminder, you can still submit questions through the question and answer tab in the main navigation. One question we did receive is, how long should our outlook be when considering capital replacements?
Rob, you want
That's a good question, Paul. I'll field that, if I may. So many communities look at a very narrow, myopic outlook on their capital replacements. 2 or 3 years, it's not really adequate. And I want to just, by comparison, I want to just explain. There's this, in developmental psychology, there's this thing called object permanence, where babies can't, up until a certain point in time, can't apprehend an object that they can't see, right? So they can will things. That's why peekaboo is so much fun. They can will things into and out of existence just by covering their eyes. But that's a superpower that is reserved for children, for babies. You don't have that superpower, and you can't just put your head in the sand and pretend that rusting chiller or that boiler is not going to hurt you. It will hurt you. And if you're looking at only a 5-year outlook, then major expenses, a $2 million roof or boiler, in the 6th year is going to sneak up on you and bite you. So it's a long-winded way to say we recommend a minimum of a 20-year outlook when planning your capital replacements.
Yeah, it's so smart to look at preventative maintenance on that as well.
Paul, any other questions?
Yeah,
So
thanks, team.
I'll just add a little piece to that. Often residents will come up and say, I noticed this, the roof needs to be replaced or something like that. And again, to instill that sense of reputation and their trust in us as professionals, to be able to say, we have a capital plan that, is 15, 20 years out. And yes, we do have that addressed. So again, it gives our residents confidence in our operations.
Thanks for that insight, Lori. I appreciate it very much. Paul, anything else from our audience today?
Yeah, thanks, team. So probably have time for one more question. So you all touched on this a little bit, but how do I educate a board on the benefit of this type of planning?
Lori, that one sounds like it's custom designed for you.
Well, I'm fortunate that we have a very strong board, but they also trust the leadership in our organization. But I have heard from colleagues across the country when they haven't had that. So to be able to go to the board and to explain to them, why these things are important, the regulatory factors, the opportunities for the synergy between different projects, and just truly being transparent with them about why things need to happen. And most often your boards are going to listen to that, and they're going to be responsive. I know, our board, we try to have a makeup of board members who come from different areas of expertise. So most often they will appreciate this sort of information so long as you're providing it to them. And frankly, that's why they've hired us. They expect us to be able to do these sort of things, to be the professionals that are forward thinking and planners. But if they're resistive, I think just keeping it in front of them and continuing to educate is important as well.
Right.
If you'll allow me to add to that, Laurie,
Please do.
outside experts tend to garner respect.
Right.
Consulting firms charge a lot of money to pitch ideas that pitch an idea that you already had and make it think it's make you think it came from an outside professional. So bringing an outside expert to your board for an educational event could be a strong and persuasive way to really move the needle. I've been in front of several boards myself just for that very purpose.
Makes sense,
That's
Rob.
a good point, Rob.
So I have to say, at LCS, we do like to end our meetings early, 5 minutes when we can. We might have that opportunity to do that here for the audience. I want to thank each and every one of you for participating today. Certainly to my panel, Nick Herrick, Vice President of Development at LCS, Bob Millam, CEO at Brunnan, and Lori Stallings, Executive Director at Cypress Glen Retirement Community. Thanks to each of you for participating today. Again, I encourage our audience, if you have any questions, like more information on anything that we discussed today, please feel free to reach out to any of us. Happy to support and serve. Always a pleasure. And thank you so much. Stay well.
Thank you, David.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you. Good to be with you all.